All right, welcome to the Finding the Slope Day 1. If we look, our goal today is to be able to recognize and determine the slope of a line given 2 points or a table and show the mastery by scoring at least an 80% on the exit ticket. Your exit ticket you will take in class tomorrow, so don't worry if you don't see it posted. You should have in front of you either the notes that I gave you yesterday, or you should have the PDF pulled up on your Google Classroom. You can follow along there as well. First thing we have to talk about is the different types of slope. We have 4 different types. We have a positive and we have a negative to start. Think about when you read a book. When we read from left to right. So if I look at my positive slope and I'm going from left to right, it's going in the upward direction. That is going to be my positive slope. My negative slope, if I read from left to right, is going down. It's just a little trick to try and remember. You can also look at your x values. The x values are getting larger, the y values are getting larger. In the negative, the x values are getting smaller, and the y values are getting smaller. We also have 2 other types of slope. We have what is called an undefined slope. In an undefined slope, this is when you get an equation, for example, x equals -4, which is the line shown here on our graph. A little way to remember it is when you have n, or a number, over 0. It's undefined. It does not work. It stands for the word no. If you type it in a calculator, it will come up with an error code. That means you're undefined. A 0 means you have 0 over a number. In this case, I'm calling it my variable k. That is okay to have. It just means you get a 0 slope. In this case, our equation would be y equals -4. So there is no x variable, but it can still have that slope. Now, when we go to find slope, the biggest thing to keep in mind is it is the change in y over the change in x. If I look at my table here, I'm going from -1 to +2. That means I'm going up by 3. If I go on the f of x side, which is also known as y, I'm going from -2 to +4, which is a gain of 6. If I look, I want my change in y over my change in x. Well, change in y is +6, and my change in x is +3. However, as I've said in class, we want to make sure our fractions are always reduced. So in this case, 6 divided by 3 gives us a final answer of 2. Our slope is 2. The change in y over the change in x is +2. If I look at my second example, again, I'm going to find the change in the x. I'm going from +1 to +2, which gives me a +1 change. On the y side, I'm going from +3 to positive side, which gives me a +2 change. Again, I want the change in y over the change in x, which the change in y is 2, and my change in x is 1. So my final answer for the second table is also a +2. Make sure when you do these, you are not just putting them in order that you find them. You need your change in y over your change in x. Again, another example. In this case, I'm going from -2 to -2. Well, that doesn't result in a change at all. If I look at my y, I'm going from +7 to +14, which gives me a +7 change. If I look at my slope, which is my change in y over my change in x, my change in y is +7, my change in x is 0. If you remember back to the notes when we talked about undefined and 0 slope, this is the same thing as a number over 0, which is no. So in this table, we end up with an undefined slope. Now, example number 4 looks a little different, only because the table is turned sideways. We still follow the same procedure, though. If I look at my change in x, I'm going up by 10 each time. My change in y, I don't have. It is 0. 4 to 4 is 0. So if I find my change in y over my change in x, well, my change in y is 0. My change in x is 10. This goes back to the example. We have 0 over a number, which is okay. So in this case, my slope is 0. And that is a different answer than undefined. So do not use them interchangeably. Undefined means we do not have a slope. 0 is a number. We can have that as a slope. The next type of slope we're going to find is when we're given 2 points. And again, it's still going to be the change in y over the change in x, but now we want to do y1 minus y2, x1 minus x2. Y still goes on top. It is still the change in y over the change in x, even though we have points now instead of a table. So if I look at my first example, it does not matter which point you choose as your ones and your twos. Personally, the first point is the 1, the second point is the 2. So I'm going to label it x1, y1, x2, and y2. Now when I go to write my equation, it is my change in y over my change in x. So I end up with negative 3 minus negative 6 over 2 minus 5. Negative 3 minus negative 6 becomes plus, and you end up with 3. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. Again, we need to reduce all of our fractions. So my slope for those 2 points is negative 1. My change in y over my change in x. If I look at my second example, again, I'm going to start by labeling my points. x1, y1, x2, and y2. When I use my formula, it is the change in y over the change in x. I have negative 3 minus negative 5, my y1 minus my y2. Negative 1 minus 2, my x1 minus my x2. That gives me negative 3 plus 5. 2 negatives make a positive, and I get positive 2. Negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. In this case, I cannot reduce my fraction, so my answer stays negative 2/3. Keep in mind, just like when we did equations, leave your fractions as they are. Do not turn them into decimals. So again, we're looking at example 3. We're going to label it x1, y1, x2, and y2. If I do my change in y over my change in x, I get negative 3 minus negative 4 over negative 1 minus negative 1. 2 negatives make a positive, so negative 3 plus 4 gives me 1. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0. Again, I have a number over 0, and that stands for no. So in this case, I have an undefined slope. And that is the answer. Do not tell me the answer is 0. 1 divided by 0 is not 0. It is undefined. Our last example, I'm going to label it x1, y1, x2, and y2. The change in y over the change in x, I get negative 2 minus negative 2 over negative 4 minus 6. 2 negatives make a positive. I'm left with 0 on top and negative 2 on the bottom. Again, 0 over a number is like saying it's okay. So in this case, I have 0 as my slope. Different than undefined, but still a number. Once you feel comfortable with the material on this video, complete the 5 practice problems that either you took with your notes with you and have printed, or you may look on Google Classroom. They are also posted there as well. Please turn them into me tomorrow along with your work. If there is no work, you are not getting credit for them. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me tomorrow morning in class, and I look forward to seeing you then.